Hello again and welcome to another Mordian Glory Warhammer 40k video. In today's episode, I want to talk about the exciting announcement from Games Workshop. Because that's right, the Guard Codex is coming in January 2025. And not only that, but we're also going to be getting a whole new wave of Death Core of Krieg models. I'm not gonna lie, it's been a while since I have been this excited about a new release from Games Workshop, and so I just want to let myself be happy. I want to let myself be excited, and today's video is just all about riffing about the upcoming Guard release and my hopes and dreams for it. What possible new units we might see, new detachments, all of that good stuff. And so without further ado, let's don our gas masks, heft our shovels, and charge right into this episode. Attention, Guardsmen. My ever-salty partner in crime, Admiral Simon, has got an important announcement for you.
This September and October, I am doing a charity walk along the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. We'll be raising money for two fantastic charities, our local hospice, Halton Haven, and also the Pink Ribbon Foundation that raises funds to combat breast cancer. As I hate camping, walking, and will be shitting in a bucket for 4 days, I will be particularly salty and would value any support you can give us. Please click the link below for our Just Giving page. Thank you very much.
You heard the man, it's for a good cause, and you all know Simon from the battle reports. That's all for now. Move out, conscripts. So first things first, let's talk about what new models I would love to see come from an expanded Krieg range. Now, at the moment, the only plastic Krieg models we can get from Games Workshop are the basic infantry. And these do a good job of serving as pretty much any kind of Krieg infantry that you want. But one thing that I would love to see is additional Krieg infantry options. Specifically, I want plastic engineers and plastic grenadiers. Now, I'm not sure if we'll get the grenadiers because they do have a Legends datasheet, and it's rare, it's not unheard of, but it's rare for Games Workshop to legend something and then bring it back. The only time I can remember them doing that is with the Orc War Boss on bike, which seems to yo-yo between Legends and relevancy every other edition. So we may not get the Grenadiers back. Games Workshop might say, you guys have got Kazakin, you guys have got Stormtroopers, your Scions, you don't need a third hotshot rifle wielding infantry. To that I say, GW, shut up and give me the Krieg Grenadiers, goddammit. But I do think there's a real chance we could get the Krieg Engineers. These are the infantry that wore the really cool like lobster plate armor from like World War I, and they were equipped with their unique weapons, their combat shotguns that fired carcass shots. In addition, they also got cool equipment like the mole launcher, and overall just had a very unique and distinctive vibe and look about them. Now, I'm hopeful that the Krieg Engineers are going to make a return. Not only have we seen some things on the rumor engine on Warhammer Community which are still unanswered, but there's also the fact that Engineers never made it to Legends. Now the Grenadiers did, they went to Legends, and so I don't think GW is going to bring them back, but Engineers, they just disappeared. And it's telling by the fact that they didn't have a Legends datasheet that I think they could be in for some new models. If they do come back, I'm going to be really interested to see how Games Workshop handles it, because they could go one of two ways. They could essentially remaster the old resin kit. They don't get too inventive with new weapon options or anything like that. It's just, here's a box of your 10 shotgun guys, off you go. But they could go full bore. They could go into it and be like, we're going to give you loads of freaky and unique Death Core engineer weapons, equipment that only these guys get access to. Maybe you've got like a demo charge launcher. Kind of crazy if they had like drilling and mining equipment. Could have a bit of a crossover with some of the GSC stuff there, where, because the engineers, the whole thing was they didn't deep strike by teleporting or dropping onto the battlefield from the sky. They could deep strike by essentially drilling up from underneath the ground. And speaking of them drilling up from the ground, if we did get a new engineer kit and GW did lean into it, it would be cool to see a new plastic Hades breaching drill kit as well, which could maybe be part of a combined box set where you get your engineers and you get the drill combined, or maybe they would sell them as two separate things. Either way, I love the idea of engineers coming back. I'm really hopeful for it, and I'm excited to see what Games Workshop decides to do with them model-wise. Rules-wise, there's a few different directions they could take it in. They could just have them as guardsmen equipped with shotguns. That would be a little bit underwhelming. They could, and as heretical as it sounds, I do think it would add an interesting dynamic to the guard. They could make them a little bit like Tau breachers, where the closer they are to the enemy, the more damage that they do. At the moment, we don't have a lot of units like that in the guard. Often with the guard, if you're shooting someone at your maximum range, you're shooting them at your most effective range anyway, and you're trying to keep people at arm's length, unless of course you're going for a cheeky bayonet charge, but that's more for memes than for dreams. If you add in a unit like Breachers, it does for guard what Breachers did for Tau, where your infantry are trying to get up close. You're adding that incentive to push them, to drive the men, and to get into the enemy's face. It would actually give the guard a distinctive kind of infantry with a distinctive job and a distinctive role on the battlefield. Another angle they could go for is rather than having them deep striking in, because we've got lots of infantry that can deep strike in the form of Scions, they could go for them infiltrating. Because the only infiltrators guard have at the moment are Ratlings, and Ratlings are too fragile and weirdly expensive to really be worth infiltrating forward. You can do it, and some people swear by it, and that's fine. But we don't really have a nice chunky unit that can infiltrate forward, and if we get turn one, jump out and start delivering some early blows to the enemy. So engineers, if they could infiltrate, it would again distinguish them from other infantry, and again give them something different to do on the battlefield than just essentially another kind of 10-man guardsman equivalent squad. The last area that I am curious about if engineers do come back, and by the way, there's no guarantee, I'm talking like they're coming back, but I absolutely have no idea. I'm just pouring all my hopes into this because I really want it to be true. But if they did come back, the big question is, are they a 5 to 10 man squad? Are they a 10-man fixed unit like Kazakin? Or do we get to see engineers taken in 10 to 20-man squads? The idea of getting 20 Krieg engineers with shotguns in one blob, shooting the enemy point blank in the face, well, it gives me an uncomfortable feeling in my trousers, I'm going to say. Moving on to my next wish list unit, I would love it if we got the return of the Centaur with a brand spanking new plastic kit. For those of you who don't know what the Centaur is, it was an old transport that the Death Corps of Krieg used to get. It was kind of unique to them. I think you could take it with other guard armies, but it was pretty much Krieg players that used to take them. And it was like half a Chimera. You could transport like 5 or 6 dudes in it. It was pretty fast, it had no armor whatsoever, and it just came with 2 stubbers. And the idea was it was a very light transport, kind of like an orc truck for the guard. It would get a squad from point A to point B. Right now, we don't really have anything like that in the guard. The Chimera is very much a mobile battle bunker. Most people like the kit because of the firing deck, and the Taurox is trying to do it, but it's a little pricey. If I could just take 5 men, bung them in the back of a Centaur, and rush them forward to get an early extend battle lines, or an early angle to jump out and maybe do some damage to an enemy unit hiding, like an infiltrator unit, that would be worth a lot to me as a player. It could also lean into this thing that Games Workshop's been doing with other factions and their dedicated transports, where you can take a 10-man squad and you can split it into 2 5-man squads so that you can put them inside the transport with limited capacity. Good example of this is you can do that with the Immolator. So you can take a 10-man sister squad, break it down to 5 sister squads, and have 5 in each Immolator, or 5 in the Immolator, 5 out of the Immolator. You can do it with Sagittars as well. So you could have like big units of like the Hearthguard or Hearthkin, I don't know, the basic dwarves, whatever they're called, and they can go in a pair of Sagittars as well, and it actually lets you get more than like 6 Sagittars in a list or something crazy. If Guard could have like a swarm of like 12 of these little buggers driving all over the place, it'd be cool, man. Proper mechanized light armor rushes. Would they all die? Sure. Would it be great to fit 12 dedicated transports on army and that not be my entire list and have other stuff in there as well? That would be even better. That would be great. And let's just be honest with each other for a moment. If Games Workshop releases a new Guard vehicle, every Guard player out there goes and buys like 3 to 6 of them. Because Guard players love their tanks, they love their vehicles. When they released the Rogal Dawn, everyone got at least one of them to try them out, and then when that Christmas box came out that had a couple of them, they couldn't keep that on the shelf. That was just selling like hotcakes. And even when Games Workshop releases things that aren't specifically for the Imperial Guard, if it can be used by Guard players, they're going to pick it up. Look at a lot of the Solar Auxilia models. Every Guard Longbid already had like 12 to 30 Lehman Russes, but the moment they showed off the Solar Auxilia Russ, they went out and bought another 3 to 6 of them. Oh, the Malcador might be going to Legends. I don't care. It's a plastic Malcador. I've been asking for it for years. I went and bought 3 of them. That's what the average Guard player was thinking. So if you give Guard players the opportunity to buy plastic tanks, they will buy plastic tanks. So it would be a smart move from GW financially, and it would be really good for Guard players because more tanks is better, and also it would give us another way, another tool in our motorized toolbox. But speaking of new plastic vehicles, it would be most bodacious of GW to release some bigger tanks as well for the Krieg. The most iconic Krieg unique super heavy was the Macarius heavy tank. The Macarius was the tank we had before the Rogal Dawn, but it was kind of doing a similar role to it. It was part way between a super heavy like a Baneblade and a regular tank like a Lehman Russ. And it came in 4 different variants. You had the Omega with its big plasma guns. You have the Vulcan with the Vulcan Mega Bolter, good for sighting down infantry. The Vanquisher, good for killing tanks. And you had the Macarius heavy tank, which was just a good all-rounder. Sadly, the Omega has gone to the farm very far away that we can't visit, but the other 3 variants are still here. And it would be really cool to see them remade in plastic. And again, this would be another big Guard tank, and again it would be a unit that a lot of people would definitely want to get their hands on. Plastic Malcadors, plastic Macariuses, these are things which, especially the more veteran Guard community, but Guard players in general, have been asking for a long time. Now we've had the plastic Malcador. Could we get the plastic Macarius? One could only hope. But speaking of a plastic Malcador, I think we could see one. But Mordian, we've already had one for the Solar Auxilia. I know we've already had one for the Solar Auxilia. But there's a lot of rumors going around, a lot of fears going around that the Malcador and all of its variants are going to be legends, and you're only going to be getting Malcadors in 30k. I think Games Workshop might release the plastic Malcador for 40k as a Krieg variant. What they might do is take those more common variants in 40k like the Malcador Defender and have those as the 40k ones, because if you look at the current 30k Solar Auxilia Malcador, you could only build it as like, I think it's the Vanquisher variant or the normal variant, but the Annihilator and the Defender, they never got made for the Solar Auxilia. They're not options right now. You can't do it. Now wouldn't it be interesting if GW were like, okay, those variants get to go to 30k, but these variants, the Defender and the Annihilator, they're going to come back over to 40k. Some of you might say, Mordian, there is no way that they are going to make 2 different Malcadors for 2 different game systems. But here's the thing. We already have evidence of them doing this. I've already told you. The Solar Auxilia Lehman Russ. We had a perfectly good Lehman Russ kit in the 40k one. Games Workshop just needed to say, use this kit for 30k. But they didn't. They went and made a separate model kit, essentially giving us 2 kits for 1 datasheet. Now their argument is, of course, well, the 30k one is only meant for 30k and the 40k one is only meant for 40k, but realistically, they now produce 2 separate Lehman Russes. And they've done this in other games as well. In Old World, you already had access to the Age of Sigmar Gloomspite Gits. They were perfectly serviceable Night Goblin models. And then nobody expected it, but Games Workshop went ahead and released the old classic Night Goblins as well. So GW is not above duplicating kits if it means that they go to 2 different game systems. But it's not all about the tanks. The Krieg are famous for one other thing, and that is their artillery. I do not believe we will see a return of the heavy mortar or the thud gun. I think those have essentially been replaced by the field ordnance battery. And if you want to use those models, you can use their Legends data sheets, or you could use your heavy mortars as bombast field guns, and you could use your thud guns as Malleus rocket launchers. But what I could see Games Workshop do is release plastic Earthshaker and Medusa carriage batteries. These units are utterly iconic to the Krieg. They are what really defines them and separates them from a lot of other Guard armies. If you were to show a non-Guard player a Grenadier model next to an Engineer model next to a Death Korps Krieg Gaza model, they probably couldn't really tell you the difference. But you put an Earthshaker carriage battery in front of them and they're going to tell you, oh yeah, that's a Krieg artillery piece. Currently, these models are sold in resin, so it wouldn't be out of the realms of possibility for GW to just stop selling the resin kit and instead sell a new plastic Krieg artillery piece. And it may be an Earthshaker or a Medusa, but I also could see them going full curveball with it and discontinuing the old Earthshakers and the old Medusas and releasing a brand new type of artillery that we haven't seen before, unique to the Krieg. Similar to what they did with the bombast field guns. I don't think anyone really expected the field orders batteries to come out, but everyone was very happy when they did. And so they might have seen that reception and how people were generally accepting of old resin models like thud guns and like heavy mortars going away and new plastic ones that were very different coming out. And they might have taken that on board and taken a similar route. But I have to say, one way or another, I'm expecting Krieg artillery. And if I don't get new Krieg artillery, I'm going to be somewhat confused, Games Workshop. But we've talked a lot about possible new Krieg models, unique things that are going to expand the range. Let's zoom out a little bit though, and briefly speculate on what we expect or what we'd like to see from the Guard Codex as a whole. Right now, Guard is in a pretty good place. We've got some solid data sheets, and even though our detachment rule doesn't affect every unit, like a lot of our Bane Blades and our Ogryns aren't affected by it, getting lethal hits on our vehicles, getting lethal hits on all of our infantry has given us a nice power boost as well. I'd also argue that our points are fairly competitive, but not ridiculously cheap, and Guard are in that nice place where we're able to win a local RTT or a local GT, but we're not stomping every event we go to, and we're not crushing every super major. So Guard are in a nice position, and I know that a lot of Guard players, myself included, are going to be both very excited for the new codex, but also somewhat worried and wary, because we wouldn't want something to come along that essentially completely neuters the faction. We've seen this before with like the Adeptus Mechanicus and with the Custodes, where the Codex was essentially the kiss of death for them. Personally, I am hoping that the foundation of the Guard remains the solid data sheets. I hope they don't start messing around the data sheets too much. Maybe tweak a few of the ones that aren't doing so well. But there's a lot of Guard data sheets which are pretty solid, which don't need really much changing about them at all. Where I hope the changes in the Codex come are to our army rule and to our detachments. So our army rule should stay as orders. And what I'd like to see is an expanded list of those orders, because only having access to 6 is a little limited and a little boring, and you tend to find yourself using the same 2 or 3 ones each time. I'd like the expanded range of orders to just give us more tools in the toolbox. There are a lot of good orders in the old 9th edition codex that GW could use as inspiration for future orders in the 10th edition codex. I also want to see certain units fixed in how they can actually issue and interact with orders. So tank commanders right now just feel stupid because they can never really get orders themselves, and they can only order like a very limited selection of tanks. I'd like to see tank commanders be expanded into Rogal Dawn tank commanders, into Baneblade tank commanders. If you want to have these tiers of command, we need to see something there. And I'd like to see commissars expanded on what units they can join and which units can receive orders, and the expanded list of commissar orders as well. So to try and summarize this whole thing about orders up, I'm not really asking for buffs to orders. I'd like us to get more orders so that we've got more variety, which just makes it more interesting, more fun. But really where I'd like to see fixes applied is to the chain of command. I don't want the guard to be so reliant on the Lord Solar, because he's the only guy that can order Bulgrin. He's the only guy that can order super heavies. I want there to be more granularity to the officer core, so that if I want to order a Baneblade, I can have like a Baneblade tank commander. If I want to order abhumans, I can have some sort of abhuman leader, maybe a bonehead sergeant or like a commissar who could order Ogrins, something like that. That's where I think orders need to be sorted out. As for detachments, a lot of the hard work has already been done for GW here. They need to go back to old resources like the Vigilus book, and also you had the old Monk Cab book from 7th edition where you had formations which you changed to be called detachments, and you'd have things like the Emperor's Shield Infantry Company, the Emperor's Blade Recon Company, the Emperor's Wrath Artillery Company. A lot of the naming, a lot of the vibe, a lot of just the general stuff for how these things should feel and work has already been done multiple times. They just need to take that stuff, update it for 10th, and it'll be perfect. Off the top of my head, you could redo the Emperor's Shield Infantry Company so that infantry officers, regimental orders, could splash like in 9th edition. That way you don't need as many officers to boss around more infantry, making the list overall more efficient, but you're not massively boosting the power of guard infantry. You're just allowing the commanders to save a few points, which they might be able to reinvest somewhere else in their army. Or on the other end of the spectrum, moving away from infantry and looking at tanks, we could have a tank company where your vehicles get to do some mini tank shocks if they charge. You could base it on the number of wounds that a vehicle has. So if it has 10 or less wounds, it only does 1 mortal wound on a 2+ when it charges in. If you've got 11 to 18 wounds, you can do D3 mortal wounds. If you've got 19+ wounds, you can do D3 plus 3 on a 2+. And so it would give the tank commanders access to some extra damage in combat, would incentivize you to maybe crush them under the tanks of the guard, but there'd also be that trade-off of if I go into combat, I might do a bit of damage, but now I might be tied up for the next turn, or I might take some damage if it's a particularly gnarly close combat unit. Those are just a couple of ideas that I've got for the codex, but I am very, very excited to see what Games Workshop comes up with. And if they do go down this essentially reimagining, this modernizing of traditional guard detachments we've had before, or if they go down another route and they start basing them on like regiments. So you have like a Mordian style detachment, a Cadian style detachment, a Krieg style detachment. There's a few different angles they could take. But regardless of what happens, I am waiting with bated breath to learn more about this new codex and these new models. Of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. These are just my ideas. Let me know what you think down in the comments section. What would you like to see from a Krieg range expansion? And what are you hoping for with a new guard codex? If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.